Welcome to What the Tech, the show that cuts right through the hype. Okay, let's get straight to it. That massive Jaguar Land Rover hack you've been hearing about? It isn't just another tech headline. No, this is a giant, flashing red light on the dashboard of modern industry. This isn't really a story about slick hackers. It's a story about corporate negligence on a truly historic scale. Let's dig in.
And that right there, that's the whole story in a nutshell. This wasn't some isolated glitch or a single vulnerability. What we're looking at is a deep, systemic rot in corporate culture, a culture that chooses to look good on a quarterly report instead of actually being strong and resilient. So, let's look at the evidence.
All right, Section 1, the £2 billion price tag. Subtitle, The Carnage. So what does catastrophic complacency actually cost in the real world? Well, the numbers are absolutely staggering, and they paint a really, really grim picture.
Just let that number sink in for a second. £1.9 billion. We're not talking about a bad quarter for JLR. We're talking about the single most expensive cyber attack in the history of the United Kingdom. This is the kind of number that should have every single corporate board in the country breaking out in a cold sweat.
And the blast radius from that £2 billion bomb? It hit 5,000 other businesses. See, this wasn't just contained inside JLR's walls. It rippled out, cascading through this massive network of smaller companies whose entire livelihoods depend on that supply chain. And that's how a single IT failure spirals into real-world bankruptcies and economic chaos for entire towns.
And if you think this was a quick fix, think again. Sure, production was stopped for about 5 weeks, but the shockwaves, the real damage, that's not expected to be sorted until at least 2026. We're talking about a multi-year recovery from an incident that was, and this is the infuriating part, completely and utterly preventable.
So you have to be asking, how on earth does this even happen? How does it get this bad? Well, let's get into the autopsy of this disaster and see how it went from a simple mistake to a full-blown catastrophe.
So, problem number 1, a complete wall of silence. JLR has flat out refused to say what kind of attack this was. Was it ransomware? Did someone just wipe their data? We have no idea. Now, their lawyers probably think this is a smart move, but for the rest of the industry, it's a strategic disaster. Their silence means nobody else can learn from their mistakes. It's like watching someone drive off a cliff and then refusing to tell anyone else the bridge is out. It is dangerously short-sighted.
And when you look at the root causes, it's almost laughably basic. Seriously, forget about some shadowy, super sophisticated hacker. This was about failing at the absolute basics. Things like not keeping your corporate email network separate from the computers that actually run the factory. Having a disaster recovery plan that was probably just a dusty binder on a shelf that nobody ever actually tested. It's Cybersecurity 101, literally the first chapter of the textbook, and they failed.
This all comes from a bigger problem, a concept you really need to understand called efficiency theater. It's this corporate obsession with squeezing every last penny, every last second out of the system. You build these incredibly optimized supply chains that look amazing on a spreadsheet, but they have zero fat, zero redundancy, zero ability to handle a crisis. They aren't lean, they're just brittle. They are designed to shatter the second they're put under any real pressure.
And when these brittle systems inevitably do what they're designed to do, which is break, you get a very clear picture of who wins and who loses. Let's break down the fallout.
So who actually pays the price here? Well, in one corner, you've got the cleanup crew. The cybersecurity vendors, the high-priced consultants, the lawyers, all of them are sending some very, very large invoices to fix a mess they had nothing to do with. And in the other corner, you have the real victims. JLR's shareholders, yeah. But more importantly, the 5,000 suppliers now staring down bankruptcy. The employees facing layoffs, the local towns that depend on those wages. That's who really pays for this kind of negligence.
Okay, so this can't just be another expensive story. It has to be a real turning point. So, we're going to move from just criticizing the problem to laying down an ultimatum for how things need to change.
And let's be clear, these are not polite suggestions. These are hard, practical, non-negotiable demands. You have to start treating your supply chain like the massive risk it is. You have to run real-world board-level war games to see if your recovery plans actually work. And number 4, this is the big one, if you really want to see change, you have to tie executive bonuses to how resilient the company is, not just how much it grew this quarter. Hit them where it hurts, their wallets. And yeah, insurers and governments have to get in on this too, forcing companies to actually prove they're secure.
This is exactly what we do here at WtT. We cut through the corporate PR, we ignore the hype, and we tell you what's really going on. If that's the kind of analysis you want, do us a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
So I'll leave you with this one last thought. If the executives and the boards out there just look at this £2 billion disaster and shrug it off as the cost of doing business, well, the next one is already coming, and it will be bigger. It will be more expensive, and it will be way more personally devastating for the thousands of regular people who will lose their jobs because of their leaders' complacency. The only real question is, will anything actually change?